Alhoewel albinisme meer gereeld onder swart Afrikane voorkom, kom dit dikwels ook onder elke bevolkingsgroep in die wêreld voor. Die Prontuitspan het naby Hoedspruit in Limpopo by die Scott-gesin gaan inloer. Die 7-jarige Jake Scott het albinisme, maar sy ouers, Dan en Nina, weier om hom in watte toe te draai. Sy grootste uitdaging is sy swak sig, maar andersins probeer hulle om hom 'n normale lewe te laat lei.
The staff call me Shakubasa. It means white lion. Why they call me that is because I've got albinism and because of my white skin and my white hair.
Jake is die jongste van 3 kinders. Sy ma, Nina Scott, vertel hoe hulle agtergekom het Jake het albinisme.
The first time I realized that there was something wrong with Jake was when he was about 6 weeks old, and I realized that the color of his eyes was different. Most babies don't really have a particular color when they're a newborn, but Jake's eyes were terracotta colored and also in a way sort of lifeless, and I thought there was something wrong. And even at 6 weeks, a baby should start to track you and track your movements, and I wasn't seeing any of that. And of course that sort of brings up a huge fear. It's a panicky sort of feeling, and you think, gosh, there's something wrong and I don't know what it is. I don't know how am I going to deal with this. But unbeknown to me, my husband and my mother were going through the same thought process as I was. And I kind of blurted it out one day and said, I think there's something wrong with his eyes. And they all confirmed with me that they felt the same thing.
We got to the pediatrician after 6 weeks, and he took a look and said, no, hang on, I want you to go and see the eye specialist, in fact. And the ophthalmologist then took Jake and had a look and said, no, he definitely has albinism. There was great relief, but then there was also this realization of, okay, hang on, we have a child now who lacks pigment. We need to find out, what does it mean? All we know about people with albinism is really that they must stay out of the sun. So I think what we started with was immediately investigating and reading and finding out what it all meant. And as we discovered more, we actually discovered that this was going to be a very interesting journey rather than one that we needed to be worried about.
A Swedish friend of ours, a guy called David Lega, who's completely physically disabled, said, you know, Nina, Jake will learn what his limitations are, and we all have limitations. And he will not feel different from anyone else because that's what he has, that's what he was born with. And he said, the best thing you can do is to not overprotect him. He absolutely has to be let free in a way that he can discover what his limitations are.
There were people who said this condition that goes with albinism, which is low vision, so his eyes don't see as much as somebody who does not have albinism. And we were not able to assess that when he was a very tiny child. And as he's grown, he's been able to tell us himself what he can see. We've had to intervene in certain instances and provide Jake with techniques to cope with that low vision.
Jake gaan skool by die Southern Cross skool op Hoedspruit. Dit was vir sy ouers belangrik om hom in 'n hoofstroomskool te sit.
Any family out there can deal with albinism, even if their budgets are low. And that is, you have to just invest in a good hat and a good pair of sunglasses if possible. But the most important thing is actually just a hat, just to shade the top of the eye and to protect the top of the eyelid. What you want to prevent is too much exposure to the sunlight and causing, ultimately, eye cancer damage to the eye. The second thing is sunscreen. Sunscreens are available in different ranges and prices, but one of the top dermatologists in South Africa told us you can honestly get any kind of sunscreen straight off the shelf out of any supermarket. It doesn't have to be any fancy imported nothing, as long as it's SPF 30 or above. In our case, we have decided to look further into it and to see how we can help Jake perform properly in a mainstream schooling environment. Unfortunately, in South Africa, most children that have albinism are sent to the school for the blind, which I find shouldn't be the case.
He's in a normal school with a normal classroom environment. We did have to assess how the seating arrangement was in a classroom, where Jake would be sitting, how he would look at the board, where the light was coming from. So those were all interventions that we were doing.
Sandra Obudo is Jake se assistent in die klaskamer.
in order for him to be able to keep up, I assist. So, for example, I'll take a whiteboard and write the same thing that's on the board in a bigger way. Or take a paper and just, again, write the same thing that's on the board in bigger letters for him to be able to see it.
Where every child is busy copying whatever 5 words they have to learn today, they are copying word for word from the board into their book. Jake's assistant is telling him, these are the words, spell them, Jake. He can't see them, so he has to use his memory. And you'll probably find that most kids with a disability of some sort, whether it be sight or hearing, that they will compensate for that in another way, and often memory comes into it.
Jake het talle vriende en niemand sluit hom uit of spot hom nie.
The wonderful thing about that is the kind of school that he's in, and kids with all different abilities and disabilities in the school as well.
They didn't know I have albinism. They all thought I was blind. They asked me lots of questions. I told them I'm not blind. And my favorite school subject is art. I love art because you draw things and make things for your parents.
As a person, he's a great human being, and he's very aware of his limitations. He doesn't let it bring him down. He believes in himself, what he can do and what he finds hard to do, and that's the sort of confidence you'll need going forward as a human being. So I think personally that's one of the great things about him.
Om wildritte in die natuur te onderneem is een van Jake se gunsteling tydverdrywe.
I love at Tanatula that I have nature all around me. I love the environment. I love the animals. I love my family. I love everything.
I did have an amazing experience in Pretoria a couple of years ago when Jake and I were at a coffee shop, and there was a little jungle gym next to the coffee shop, and our waiter was black South African with albinism, and Jake was climbing on the jungle gym, and our waiter turned to me and he said to me, what's going on with that little boy? What's with his eyes? And I looked at the waiter and I said, he has albinism. He's like you. And he said, what? And I said, yeah. He said, can I have a look? I said, yes. I said, Jake, come over. And the two of them got together and they had such a deep look into each other's eyes. And the black guy with his beautiful pale skin had these amazing honey-colored eyes, and Jake with his white porcelain skin and his slightly pinkish reddish eyes, and they were touching each other's faces and holding each other's hair, and there was this amazing connection between the two of them. And the waiter said to me, he said, we're the same. I said, yeah, you're exactly the same. You're both exactly the same. You're identical. You're both Africans with no pigment, no color. You're the same. He said, we're like brothers. It was such an amazing moment.